My name's Neil from the New Dawn Studio in Whitburn, West Lothian, Scotland, www.newdawnstudio.org. And today, Christmas Day 2013, we're interviewing Jack from the Punk Rock Demonstration radio show in the west coast of the USA. So Jack, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I just finished drinking a cup of tea and then drank some gin after that, so a nice milk a Christmas tree. So I guess I'm ready for the world.
Alright Jack, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the Punk Rock Demonstration radio show?
Sure, I'm Jack and I host the Punk Rock Demonstration radio show. I started it back in 2005, a little bit before Christmas, so that would be 8 years ago that I've started this show? And I've been doing shows every week on Mondays from 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific. But as for some information about me, I'm a really technical person. Many people don't really know that I'm really geeky and stuff, but I am. I'm actually a systems administrator, and I do a lot of open source projects and programming and lots of very strange stuff that you've probably never heard of, unless you're really into computers or something. But on the non-geeky side, I'm very addicted to punk rock, and that's why I do the show. To feed my punk rock addiction, as well as spread my punk rock addiction to everywhere else, and bring out new bands that people have never heard of before, because there's just so many bands out there that it's really difficult to find good music. And for me, it's been really hard to find good music until I started the show. And hopefully the show makes it easier for everyone else to find good punk rock. So that's why I do it, and that's why it exists.
Do you come from a musical family, Jack?
I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, but no, I do not come from a musical background. So I don't know how to sing, and I don't know how to play any musical instruments. I do own an electric guitar, which I've attempted to learn many times, and I just cannot seem to grasp it. And I've played trumpet. It didn't go very well, so yeah. I can't play any musical instruments, and I don't come from a musical background.
How long have you been a punk rocker?
Well, I don't know how to answer that without giving away my age, but I would probably say since the 90s. And then I went into the electronic musical genre in about 2003 or so. And then I found that too many of my friends, or new friends, decided to overdose on various intoxicating substances. So I went back to punk rock back in 2004, and I've been a punk rocker ever since.
Are you in a band, or have you been in any bands? Do you have any recordings?
I've never officially been a band member in a band, but I have been band manager for several bands. I've been the band manager for Defied and Infected Youth, and I was on my way to managing a third band before I decided that it was probably time to stop doing that, because bands were breaking up all the time. I don't know if it was from me or if it was from other things, but I decided not to manage the third band. That third band would have been Machinery, but luckily they broke up before I became their band manager. So yes, I've managed several bands. I have never recorded any songs of my own because I've always been the band manager, but I have recorded Infected Youth's album, and that is the only recording that I can really take credit for.
What are your musical influences, Jack?
Not sure if musical influences would be the right word for doing what I do. So talking a little bit about people that have influenced me, I would have to say Joe Sib from Complete Control Radio has influenced me a lot, and that was actually part of the reason why I decided to do punk rock radio. And then Connie Torres, she's passed away unfortunately, but she used to be the manager for the radio station I used to work for, and she would have been the reason why I actually did the radio show.
What does punk rock mean to you?
I believe punk rock is more of a lifestyle than anything. To me, being punk rock is being independent, not looking the same as everyone else, not thinking the same way as everyone else, and just being able to think for yourself and analyze things, sort of like, well, I don't know if I should say this, but I think religion is a very big part of not being punk rock, because religions dictate what you should or shouldn't do, and punk rock is the complete opposite of that. So religion is a good example of what not punk rock is, and the opposite of that is what punk rock is to me. So I don't know if that made any sense or not, but in terms of the music, I like the lyrics to a lot of songs, and punk rock is one of the genres which have good lyrics, not some other strange bands that I won't mention, but the majority of them have good lyrics, and the fashion is just fun and cool and very DIY.
Do you think there's been a growth in punk rock music stroke oi music worldwide, or is punk and oi a dying breed?
Well, we can't really call it growth and we can't really call it decline, because it's sort of like all of the other musical genres out there, like reggae and rap and pop and electronic. They don't really have growth and they don't really have decline, but they're always there. Sometimes a little bit more active and sometimes they're not so active. Sort of like reggae. Back then reggae was a really big thing, like back in the 50s. And then reggae turned into skinhead reggae, and then it just totally got wiped off the face of the planet with disco and industrial and rock and all those musical genres. But then it came back when Sublime started getting into reggae, and Bob Marley and just all those other reggae bands, and brought reggae back. But that doesn't really mean that they're growing. They're just there. Same with oi and same with punk. Oi will always be there and punk will always be there. And lately, I've heard plenty of new oi bands. Like there's this brand new band from Minneapolis called The Shame, really good oi. And there's plenty of oi bands that are still active, like the Harrington Saints. And you've got Slick 46 and Rust from Australia. And with punk, it's even more because oi is included in punk. And there's punk rock bands popping up all the time, like almost every day, everywhere. They might not be big, but they're still around and they're still making punk rock and contributing to the punk rock community. So it's not really growing and it's not really dying, but it's holding steady. And the sound is ever changing. So it sometimes turns into like pop punk, like Blink-182, or like classical punk, like White Oleander, or spoken punk, like Slow Children and silly punk like Bad English. Just plenty of punk out there. It's just a really big word to describe this musical genre that just does not go away.
I hear a lot of bands moaning about they can't get on the radio. You're on a radio station. How does a band go about getting their music played on the punk rock demonstration show?
Yes, it is hard to get your band on a radio show, and it's really difficult because one, there aren't that many radio shows that play punk rock, and two, bands just don't send it in correctly. I'm very lenient with people sending me music, but sometimes I get very irritated and I will delete or throw away things that are not sent in properly. And by improperly, I mean like missing the track listing to your demo that you've sent. Radio stations cannot play a song on your demo if they don't know what the song is. So those are guaranteed in the trash because I just can't do anything with it. So that's one huge thing that just drives me up the wall, and I'm sure it drives a lot of other people up the wall, or not, they'll just throw it away. But on the positive note, if you want to send in music, it's very easy to do so for my show. You can just go to my website, punkrockdemo.com, and there's a link to directly send me music. It's called Send Music, and if you can't send music digitally, you can always send it to a physical address, which is also listed on my website. And if you still can't figure it out, you can send me a message by clicking on like Ask Jack or through the contact page. But for playing music on the show, it's very difficult to play the same bands all the time because there's just so much music out there. And if your music isn't special, then it might not get as much play as you would want. But for me, I make it a point to be able to play every single song that sounds decent on my show at least once, because I believe that everyone deserves a chance to get heard, even if they are not so good or even if they're just brand new. So I always play new songs on my program at least once, and if it's really good, then it gets multiple plays on the show, and if it gets requested, even more. So it's actually very simple to get songs to me, but as far as getting it played all the time, you really have to be good at what you do to be able to get your music played often on any show. And that's just in general, not just mine. But if you do all of the stuff correctly, your chances are higher. Especially when you've got a track listing to your demo or your CD and everything is spelled correctly and all of your contact information is on there. There have been so many bands that just sent in their demo, but they didn't put any contact information or put the incorrect contact information on there. So even if I wanted to get more information about the band, I couldn't because the information was incorrect. So make sure that you really think about what you're sending in, because once you send it in, that's how you're going to be perceived.
Have you got any advice to any bands out there?
Some advice, I would say to practice a lot, because if you practice a lot, it will show. If you don't, then you'll just be a sloppy mess, and you'll just disappoint your fans, and it won't sound very good. Maybe that's why when I was band manager, the bands broke up because they weren't really wanting to be professional. Sort of like showing up late to practices or getting too intoxicated to be able to record. That stuff is just ridiculous. And it would never make your band successful. I'm sure bands like The Addicts, for example, they're very silly and everything like that, but they're very organized. And what I mean by organized is they know what they're doing. Because if they didn't, they wouldn't be where they are today. Even if you want to be a band that wants to be cool and silly and just have a fun time, when you're performing, you don't want to be performing and being so drunk that you just can't perform. Good example are like the Pogues. Their musical talent is amazing, but when they perform, they can't perform. And that's not what people want to see. They want to see a performance. Same thing with listening to music. When you're recording a song, people don't want to hear crap. They want to hear something professionally recorded. That's my advice. Be professional in what you do, even if it is punk rock and all about having a good time and getting drunk and all that stuff. When it comes to showing off, you just have to deliver. Otherwise, you won't get very far.
Jack, I'm a big fan of oi music in the UK and Europe, and the world in general. Would you play British oi, European oi, American oi bands on your radio station? For example, Code 1, Baker's Dozen, Combatants from Sweden, TMF, Citizen Kane, Hooligan UK, Heroes, No Quarter, Street Punk Drunks, Steel Comb, Breakout, Last Orders, Short Cropped, Flathead, Adverse Society, and bands such as these. There's hundreds of them in the UK and worldwide who never ever get played on radio.
I don't see why they wouldn't be able to get played on my show. Well, I do see one reason why, and that would be that I don't have their music, and even if I wanted to play them, I couldn't play them. So that would be one big factor in determining if I would play their music or not. And one very critical one is about the lyrics of the songs. There has actually been one band with very offensive lyrics, and that band, every time I've played them, has gotten very bad feedback, and I will not play that band anymore because of that. And I didn't really know what those lyrics were until I actually looked them up, and they were quite racist lyrics. So I will not play any music that is racist, and I won't play any music that has gotten lots of complaints about the lyrics of the songs. So as long as I have their songs and they don't have very bad lyrics, I'll play them. And they also have to sound like punk and oi. Otherwise, if it sounds like rap, definitely not.
How often every week is a punk rock demonstration on the airwaves?
You can actually hear it all the time, but the new shows that I do are every Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific, and you can listen to it live at punkrockdemo.com. They're not really live anymore, but they're recorded, and only the new shows come out every Monday, and it starts at 7 p.m. Pacific. All of the other times you can listen to the older shows or different shows. That's on the station side, but it's also on demand as a podcast at iTunes and also on my website. You can just download it and listen to an older show at any time. It's just Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific is when a new show comes out.
Are you a free radio station?
Definitely.
How many bands have you interviewed, and how many shows have you done?
I cheated, and I actually counted how many interviews I did just now, which turned out to be 130. And as far as the number of shows I've done, I have, up to Christmas, I've done 405 shows. The Christmas show is actually the 405th radio show, and all of them are archived on my website, punkrockdemo.com, and you can find the interviews as well.
Can you tell us a little bit about the 21st Century Punk Rock documentary?
Sure, the 21st Century Punk Rock documentary is actually a documentary, and right now I've released Volume 1 and do plan on releasing Volume 2 sometime in 2020 or so. The first one is a documentary of punk rock between 2000 to 2010, and the second one is going to be a documentary between 2010 to 2020, and hopefully it'll be released sometime in 2020 or so. Volume 1 was released in 2009, so just slightly before the 2010 date. I was able to predict what happened in 2010, so that was not a problem. And the documentary talks all about what punk rock was like in the 2000s, and I figured I'd do that because I've never seen a documentary between 2000 to 2010 related to punk rock, and I'm a big documentary fan. I've watched almost every documentary there is and was about punk rock, and at the time there just was not a documentary between 2000 to 2010, so I figured I think I'll make one, and that's what happened. I made one and released it, and now it's out there for people to see what happened between 2000 to 2010 in the punk rock world. The style of the documentary I also wanted to follow was the particular documentary that I saw that was really good, and that was UKDK. If you've never heard of it, you should watch that documentary also. UKDK was a 1980s documentary about punk rock between the 70s and the 80s, and it had the biggest bands of the time period, like Vice Squad and the Addicts and the Business, and they did interviews of those bands and played a live show in that time period, and that's what I did with this 21st Century Punk Rock. I did it the same way, where it was the biggest bands between 2000 to 2010, do an interview with them, and then play a live show and talk about punk rock. So the style of the documentary is very like UKDK, but in the 2000s.
Can you do long-distance interviews with bands? And how do you conduct these interviews?
Definitely. We're doing a long-distance interview right now. I'm in Los Angeles, California in the United States, and you are in the UK, so we're doing a long-distance interview right now. And what we do, well, if it was me doing the interview, I would record the interview questions and then send that over to the band that's going to be interviewed, and they can fill in the blanks and send it back, and then we turn it into a radio show, and the radio show just so happens to be an interview. So it's actually a very simple process. Assuming that both of us have microphones and we can record and hear each other, it's actually pretty simple. But for bands that are local, I usually do those interviews in person, and I can either go to them or they can come to me, but we can get it done.
Have you anything to say, Jack, to the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, of punks and oi fans and musicians out there who listen to your show?
Well, I always like to say, if you do something, do it well, otherwise don't do it. That applies to punk also. If you do the punk rock thing, do it well, don't destroy it, because if you destroy it, you won't get to do it. But what I really would like to say is that digital microphones are a total piece of crap. That's what I'm using right now. And if you hear periodically, you'll hear like plosives and all this nonsense, but I'm just too lazy, or lazy is probably not the right word, but too inconvenienced to set up the analog microphone that works so much better. So if you do recordings, analog is the way to go, and that's really what I have to say. I'm very old school like that.
What are your plans for the future?
Well, since 2014 is around the corner, it's probably time to plan out some stuff. But as for long-term plans, the 21st Century Punk Rock Volume 2 is the long-term plan, and the short-term plan is to finish fixing my website. The website is really, really old programming. I started programming the website way back in 2005, and I just haven't really revamped the entire thing because it's very difficult, especially when it was written during a time before all these new web technologies were invented. And to be able to use these new web technologies, you have to either completely rewrite the website or upgrade little pieces of it and live with the annoyances. And that's currently what's going on right now. So long-term and short-term plan is to revamp the website and finish inputting all of the songs I have into the song listing. So that way you can search for all of the songs that I have and request them. So far I've gotten to the J's as of today, and that's out of all 26 letters of the alphabet. So we've got a little bit more than 50% entered into the website. Most of the songs are already entered. It's just missing some critical information like the album or the label it's associated with. So that's currently what I'm working on, and that's currently taking up all of my time. And we're expecting to do an interview with more bands in 2014. The first one is probably going to be by Pipes and Pints. I'm going to be writing the questions for that very shortly and sending that over. Pipes and Pints are from the Czech Republic, and hopefully we'll have an interview of them soon. Some more upcoming interviews. We've got Against Empire in line as well. We're trying to figure out the logistics of that, and I've got a couple other bands in mind, but I don't want to tell you who they are at the moment because I'm not sure we can get them. So that's what's coming up for the future. And lastly, increasing the audio quality of the show. A lot of the music I have was on CDs, but they were converted to digital, so that way I wouldn't have to keep pulling the CD out every time I played the song. But unfortunately, the technology back in 2005 wasn't all that great, and the audio quality just sounded like crap. So they're being re-encoded with today's technology, and they sound a billion times better. That should be done within the next couple months, and all the songs should sound amazing, hopefully.
How can fans and bands contact the Punk Rock Demonstration Radio Show?
There are actually plenty of ways to get a hold of me. The best way to get a hold of me is through my website, punkrockdemo.com. I've got a text box on there called Ask Jack, and you can type a question in there or type something in there and click on the button Ask Jack, and it'll send that over to me and I can respond to you by email. Or if you want to just email me directly, you can go to the contact page and find my email address on there and just send me an email there. If you're too lazy to do that and you just want to hear my email address, it's actually punkrockdemo@yahoo.com. That's punkrockdemo@yahoo.com. I still haven't gotten used to using Jack at punkrockdemo.com, but I also have that available. It goes to the same place. There's just something about running my own mail server that I just don't trust. So I just continue to use the Yahoo. I also have a button on there where you can send in your band bio if you're a band, and you can just click on the Submit Band Bio from the main page, punkrockdemo.com, and send in your band's bio to be featured on the website. You can leave a comment on the bottom of that. And if you don't like to write, you can always call me. I've got my hotline on there. It's a phone number. It's just 209-980-PUNK. And if you can't remember that, you can just go to the website, punkrockdemo.com, and you can see the phone number on the top. You can leave a voicemail. Sometimes I answer the phone. And you can text it as well. People have been using the text very frequently because I guess everyone's on their phone and they like to text. There's also a request song link if you want to request a song. Click on request or just type in your request if you want to request something that's not listed. And a little note, if it's not listed, it probably means I don't have it, but sometimes I do. So if you're lucky and you send in something that isn't listed, I might have it. It's happened before. And the very last way to contact me is through Send Music. If you're a band, you can send in your music, and only if you're a band, you can send in your music, and you can send me songs through the website. It's very easy. So there's plenty of ways to contact me, and if you still can't figure it out, then best way is just go to punkrockdemo.com and find the contact link.
And finally, Jack, I'd like to thank you for playing a couple of the Mighty New Dawn songs on your radio show, and for taking the time to be interviewed by me. Have a loud and proud punk rock New Year, and an oi oi for Scotland!
Yes, and thank you for having me, and hopefully everyone has a wonderful new year and has gotten way too much information to be able to digest in this interview.
You are the predator, you are the wizard man.